She was alone, in the snow, with two children clinging to her frozen coat. No one stopped, until a black SUV hit the brakes. The man inside seemed like a savior, but she had no idea. He was hiding a past even darker than hers. Tell us which city you're watching this story from. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Hope you love this one. The cold was punishing. Snow fell like powdered glass, blanketing everything in silence, except for the soft cries of a baby and the distant roar of an engine. A woman, her coat torn and soaked, clutched two children close to her chest on the edge of an abandoned gas station. Her lips were cracked, her eyes red and wide. The boy, no more than 4, whimpered into her side. The girl, maybe 7, stared ahead, as if she'd seen too much already. That's when the black SUV slowed down. That's when everything changed. Jonathan Reed had every reason to keep driving. His watch read 2:11 a.m., his thoughts drowning in business mergers and divorce papers. He had no room for sympathy, but something deep and primal, pulled his gaze to the shadows near the gas station sign. He saw them, a mother and 2 kids, freezing, fragile, forgotten by the world. He hit the brakes hard. Tires crunched. Snow. His heart didn't know it yet, but it had just cracked open. He stepped out, his shoes crunching on ice. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. The woman jolted, pulling the children tighter. "We're fine," she replied quickly, too quickly. But she wasn't fine. None of them were. Jonathan saw the girl's fingers, blue at the edges. The boy's lips trembled with each shallow breath. "You shouldn't be out here," he said, stepping closer. "It's below freezing." Silence. Then the woman's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back like a dam refusing to break. "I don't need your pity," she whispered. "I didn't stop out of pity," he replied. "I stopped because no one else did." That line hung in the air. She looked at him again, truly this time. Something in his eyes, grief maybe, matched her own. "Just for tonight," he offered. "Warm beds, real food, nothing else." She looked down at her children. The girl had stopped blinking. The boy's body was limp against her. She nodded. Just once. That was enough. The drive was silent. Jonathan turned the heat all the way up. The woman's name was Elizabeth. Her daughter Mia, her son Leo. They didn't speak, just stared out at the snow swirling like ghosts in the headlights. Jonathan didn't ask questions. He didn't want to break the spell. His mansion sat behind a tall gate on the edge of the city, a fortress of glass and stone. It was never meant to be a sanctuary. Tonight it would become one. Celia, the housekeeper, opened the door with a startled expression. "Mr. Reed," she asked, eyes darting to Elizabeth and the children. "Please prepare the guest wing," he said simply. 3 beds, extra blankets." Celia nodded. She had learned not to ask too many questions over the years. Elizabeth hesitated at the threshold, clutching Leo close. Jonathan turned back. "It's just warmth," he said again. "Just for tonight." That lie would be the first of many. Inside, the children came to life slowly. Mia touched the soft rug with bare fingers, as if she didn't believe it was real. Leo whimpered until a blanket was wrapped around him. Elizabeth didn't speak. She watched them, eyes hollow, muscles tight. Jonathan handed her a bowl of soup and walked away. He didn't want to hover. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and stared into the fireplace. Why did he stop the car? He hadn't felt anything in years, since the accident, since the day he lost his daughter and his wife walked out. He had built walls around himself, buried in spreadsheets and silence. But tonight, something thawed, something old and aching. In another room, Elizabeth sat at the edge of the bed. She didn't eat. She just watched her children sleep. She hadn't had silence like this in months. She was afraid of what it might reveal. By morning, the storm had passed. Light crept through tall windows, dusting the floors in gold. Jonathan knocked gently. "Breakfast," he said. "You don't have to stay, but if you want to, the offer's still open." Elizabeth looked up, exhausted but composed. "We won't be trouble," she said. "I know," he answered. "That was the beginning, not of charity, but of a story that would tear their pasts open and rewrite their futures." Jonathan didn't know that within weeks, the woman sleeping under his roof would challenge everything he thought he knew about loyalty, sacrifice, and love. He didn't know that someone from her past would return, dragging chaos behind him, or that his own demons, buried deep, would begin to stir. For now, all he knew was that a stranger had stepped into his world, and he didn't want her to leave. Elizabeth didn't know if she could trust him. She didn't know if kindness came with a price. But she had no strength left to keep running. For Mia and Leo, she'd do anything. Even this, even believe that not every man wanted to hurt her, that not every act of generosity came with a hidden cost. The house was quiet again. Snow melted from the rooftops. Inside, two broken lives had just collided, and outside, in the city's underbelly, someone else had taken notice. Someone who didn't forget. Someone who believed Elizabeth still belonged to him. Mia clung to her new blanket like it was stitched from hope itself. Leo, nestled beside her, finally slept without twitching at every sound. Elizabeth stood in the doorway, arms crossed tightly, eyes scanning every inch of the luxurious guest room as if expecting it to vanish. She hadn't unpacked the plastic bag she carried, her only belongings, just in case this, too, was temporary. Her body ached from the weeks on the street, but her mind was sharper than ever. Safety was an illusion she couldn't afford to trust. Downstairs, Jonathan Reed was already dressed. Crisp white shirt, cufflinks, hair combed back like every morning. The illusion of control. He sat at the head of the table, coffee steaming before him, unread emails glowing on his tablet. But he wasn't reading. His thoughts were upstairs, on a woman whose name still tasted unfamiliar, on two children who didn't know that sometimes monsters wore suits and drove nice cars. When Elizabeth finally came down, it was tentative, like each step might trigger a trap. "Good morning," Jonathan said, not rising. She nodded, eyes flickering to the untouched toast and fruit laid out on the table. "You didn't have to do all this." He raised an eyebrow. "Didn't I?" There was a beat of silence. Then, "You still think I want something?" Her jaw tightened. "Everyone wants something." He leaned back, hands folding. "Fair, but I already told you, no strings." She didn't reply. Instead, she reached for a slice of toast and sat as far from him as the table allowed. Jonathan watched her quietly. Her clothes were torn but clean, her hands blistered. She moved like someone used to hiding pain. Mia had frostbite on her fingers, he said. "I noticed last night." Elizabeth froze mid-bite. "She'll be fine," she said. "She always is." That reply told him more than she meant it to. Mia had been through hell, and it wasn't recent. Jonathan kept his tone steady. "There's a doctor on call if you want me to arrange a visit." Elizabeth stared at him. "We won't stay long." "I didn't ask you to leave," he replied. Her fork clinked against the plate, but she said nothing. Somewhere upstairs, a child's laughter rang out. Both of them turned their heads at the same time. It was Leo, laughing. That sound hadn't existed in their world for weeks. "Who are you, really?" Elizabeth asked suddenly. "Why do you care?" Jonathan looked down at his coffee. "I guess. I just remember what it feels like to lose someone." That was the closest he'd come to explaining anything. Her expression softened barely. "You lost someone?" "A daughter," he said. "Years ago, car accident. My wife never forgave me." Elizabeth's throat tightened. For the first time, she didn't see a millionaire. She saw a man. Later that day, while Mia and Leo explored the backyard under Celia's watchful eye, Elizabeth wandered into the sunroom. Books lined the walls. A grand piano sat untouched in the corner. The house whispered wealth, but also grief. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was empty. Jonathan entered quietly behind her. "You play?" he asked, nodding to the piano. "I used to," she said, "before." "Before?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked over and touched one of the keys. A single note filled the room. Soft. Sad. Jonathan noticed her. Eyes water, though she blinked it away. "This place is beautiful," she said finally, "but it's not a home." That hit harder than he expected. "No," he agreed. "It hasn't been for a long time." The doorbell rang. Jonathan's expression changed instantly. Tension, alert. "Stay here," he said, stepping into the hallway. Elizabeth heard muffled voices, then the front door closing. When Jonathan returned, his face was unreadable. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just business." But he didn't meet her eyes. A flicker of something passed over his face. Guilt? No. Fear. That night, after the kids had fallen asleep, Elizabeth crept down to the kitchen. Celia had left her a plate of food in the fridge. As she heated it up, she noticed a door slightly ajar near the hallway. Curious, she peeked in. A study. Papers stacked high. Framed news articles about Reed Holdings. But on one wall, a series of photos caught her attention. A little girl with auburn curls and a bright smile. The same face appeared over and over. One picture had her on Jonathan's shoulders, laughing. Another showed her asleep in a hospital bed. Elizabeth backed away, quietly. The next morning, Jonathan found her in the garden. "You saw the pictures." It wasn't a question. She nodded. She looked happy. He smiled faintly. She was, until she wasn't. "You blame yourself, don't you?" he asked, eyes meeting hers. "For what happened to you?" Elizabeth flinched. "I didn't deserve what." "He did." "No," Jonathan said, "but you still think it's your fault." She didn't respond. Couldn't. Because it was true. And maybe in him, she saw her reflection. Two broken people pretending to have moved on, but trauma clings. And what neither of them knew was that their pasts were about to explode, just when they were learning to breathe again. The third morning, in the mansion arrived with a quiet too perfect to trust. Elizabeth woke early, heart pounding as if she had been running in her sleep. Leo and Mia were still out cold, faces peaceful, a scene too delicate to disturb. She tiptoed into the hallway, letting the scent of fresh coffee guide her downstairs. Celia was already bustling in the kitchen, humming softly, a ritual that gave the house an illusion of normalcy. But Elizabeth knew better than to trust peace. Peace was what came right before the storm. Jonathan stood by the garden doors, eyes locked on the frost-covered lawn. "You didn't sleep again," Elizabeth said softly. He didn't turn. "I've forgotten how." She joined him, close, but not touching. "I dreamed I was back on the street," she confessed. "Only this time, no one stopped, not even you." He glanced at her. "I would have. Every time." That wasn't just sympathy. It was something else. A quiet vow. Later that day, Elizabeth decided to walk into town. She insisted on going alone. "I need to feel like I still belong to the world," she told Jonathan. He didn't argue, but handed her a pepper spray canister without a word. As she stepped outside the estate gates, a shadow watched her from across the street. Hidden behind tinted windows, a figure leaned back in a beat-up sedan, eyes fixed on her every move. He muttered to himself, "There she is." Elizabeth didn't see him. She walked to the corner store, bought snacks for the kids, and picked up a second-hand puzzle book. Small things, but they made her feel human again. On the way back, she paused in front of a community board. An old missing persons flyer had been freshly pinned. She leaned closer. The name hit her like a punch. Derek Blake, her ex's cousin, a man she hadn't thought of in years. Someone Daniel had once warned her never to be alone with. She walked faster. She didn't notice the sedan, slowly following from 2 blocks behind. Back at the mansion, Jonathan sat in his office, fingers tapping against the desk. He hadn't told Elizabeth about the man who came to the door yesterday. He wasn't a client. He was a private investigator, hired by someone from Elizabeth's past. The man left a card, no name, just a number and a warning. She's not safe. Jonathan hadn't called back. Yet. Elizabeth returned before sunset. Her shoulders were tense, her steps deliberate. "Something wrong?" Jonathan asked. She hesitated, then handed him the flyer. "This man, he used to be close with my ex. I don't know why his name would be here again." Jonathan studied the photo. "He's been missing for years, it says." "Exactly, but who put this up now? And why in this neighborhood?" She wasn't being paranoid. She was remembering how danger always found its way back. That night, after dinner, Elizabeth tucked the children in, kissed their foreheads, and walked out into the hallway. Jonathan was there, leaning against the wall. "I should tell you something," he said. "Yesterday, someone came asking about you." Elizabeth froze. "Who?" "Didn't give a name, just a number. And a warning." She exhaled sharply. "Then it's starting." "What is?" he asked. But she didn't answer. She walked past him, fast, hands shaking. He followed. "Elizabeth, what's starting?" She turned, eyes wild. "Daniel never stopped looking for me. I don't care what he told people. He always said, if he couldn't have me, no one could." Jonathan's jaw clenched. "You think he sent someone?" "I think he's always been watching," she whispered. "I think everything we've built here, it's about to be ripped apart." He stepped closer. "I won't let that happen." "You can't stop him," she snapped. "You don't know him." "Then tell me," he said. "Help me understand." But instead she closed herself off. "Good night, Jonathan." She walked away. In her room, Elizabeth stared at the sleeping faces of Mia and Leo. She pulled the blinds shut, double-locked the door, pushed a chair beneath the handle. Her heart thundered, and as she lay down, she whispered, "Please, not again." Outside the house, the same sedan idled quietly across the street. Inside, its driver clicked a camera. Flash, another. The house's lights turned off one by one, and then everything was dark. Morning came without warmth. The sun glared through pale clouds but gave no comfort. Inside the mansion, the family pretended it was just another day. Mia painted at the breakfast table. Leo lined up toy cars with methodical focus. Jonathan sipped his coffee without tasting it. Elizabeth smiled for their sake, but her eyes didn't match. She was waiting for a knock at the door, a shadow. In the window, anything. "You okay?" Jonathan asked gently. She didn't lie. "No." Later, Jonathan pulled Celia aside in the kitchen. "Have you noticed anything strange outside? Cars? People hanging around?" Celia frowned. "There was a car I didn't recognize yesterday, parked across the street for hours. I thought it might be a neighbor's guest." Jonathan's jaw tensed. It wasn't. He checked the security cameras himself. The footage was grainy, but the license plate of the sedan was clear. He ran it through a friend in law enforcement. The plate came back flagged, stolen. Meanwhile, Elizabeth searched online. She typed Daniel Blake into every search engine. No social profiles, no photos newer than 3 years ago. She searched forums, Reddit threads, even dark web archives. Nothing. He'd gone underground. That was more terrifying than seeing him. She remembered the night she ran, how he slammed her against the fridge, how Mia had screamed from the hallway. She remembered the cold silence afterward, the police report she never finished, and how he whispered, "Run all you want, I'll find you." In the garden, Mia ran toward Jonathan, waving a drawing. "It's us," she said proudly. The picture showed 4 stick figures, Mia, Leo, Elizabeth, and Jonathan. He crouched to her level. "I get to be in the family now?" She giggled. "You already are." That laugh broke something inside him. He wasn't ready to admit what. He felt, not yet, but it was growing, not pity, not charity, something dangerously close to love. That night, Elizabeth couldn't sleep. Her instincts screamed. At 3:18 a.m., she slipped out of bed, quietly opened the window, and looked down at the street. The sedan was gone, but something else caught her eye. An envelope taped to the front gate. Her stomach dropped. She crept down the hallway barefoot, avoiding every squeaky floorboard. Jonathan, hearing the motion, intercepted her at the foyer. "Where are you going?" She nodded toward the gate. "There's something there." He grabbed a flashlight. Together, they opened the front door. The wind was biting. Jonathan peeled the envelope from the iron gate, opened it with a slow dread. Inside was a single photograph, Elizabeth walking with Leo down a sidewalk, taken from behind, dated yesterday, and scrawled in sharp red ink across the bottom, "Still watching." Jonathan didn't speak. He only turned to her, and in her eyes he saw the full weight of fear. "I'm calling the police," he said. Elizabeth grabbed his arm. "Don't." "We have to," he said firmly. "We have evidence now. This is stalking. It won't stop him. It'll make him escalate. So we wait? Hope he gets bored?" She met his gaze. "No, we prepare." The next day, Jonathan brought in someone new, ex-military, sharp-eyed, lean build. "This is Noah," he told Elizabeth. "Security detail. He'll stay here. Watch. The grounds accompany you if needed." Elizabeth narrowed her eyes. "I don't want my life militarized." "And I don't want you dead," he replied. "Let me protect you." Noah stayed in the background, observing everything. He didn't speak much, but his presence changed the atmosphere. At dinner, Mia asked, "Why is that man outside?" "He's helping," Jonathan said. "Like a superhero?" Leo asked. Jonathan smiled. "Exactly like that." But inside, Elizabeth burned with guilt. She was dragging this storm into a house that had already known loss. She lay awake again that night, staring at the ceiling. Jonathan entered quietly, holding a folded sheet of paper. "It's Daniel's name. I found a phone number linked to him. Prepaid. Disposable." She took the paper with trembling fingers. "What if I call?" "What if he answers?" he asked. Neither of them had an answer. Upstairs, Mia stirred in her sleep. She whispered, "Mommy, he's outside again." Elizabeth bolted upright. "What did you say?" Mia mumbled, already drifting off again. "I saw him, at the window." Elizabeth raced to the window. Nothing, but her heart knew better. Somewhere, out there, Daniel Blake was circling, and the game had just begun. Elizabeth's fingers hovered over the burner phone Jonathan had given her, the one programmed with Daniel's last known number. Her hand trembled, a storm swirling beneath her ribs. She hadn't heard his voice in almost a year, but it haunted her, smooth, calculated, always one breath away from violence. "You don't have to call him," Jonathan said, watching from across the room. "But I think it's time we stop letting him control the silence." She nodded slowly and pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, a third time. Then, click. Silence. A static breath. And then the voice. "I knew you'd break first," Daniel said, calm as ice. "You always do." Elizabeth froze, the sound of his voice splintering every wall she'd rebuilt. "You need to stop," she said, forcing calm. "We're safe now. Leave us alone." Daniel chuckled, slow and low. "Safe? You think that fortress protects you? I walk by it every night." Jonathan stepped closer. Elizabeth put the phone on speaker. "She's not alone anymore," Jonathan said firmly. Daniel didn't pause. "Ah, the new guy, the White Knight. I've been watching you too. Fancy suits, big house. You think she loves you?" Elizabeth's blood turned to ice. "I don't need you to love me," Jonathan replied. "I just need you to stay away." Daniel laughed again, but this time it was bitter. "You took my family. Now I'll take yours." The call ended. The room fell into dead silence, broken only by the shattering of Elizabeth's teacup as it slipped from her hand. "He's going to do something," she whispered. "I can feel it." Jonathan grabbed the phone. "We record that call. We go to the police. Now we've got his voice threatening us." But Elizabeth was already shaking her head. "You don't know him. You don't know how deep his reach goes." "Then educate me," Jonathan said. "Tell me everything." So she did. For the first time she laid it bare, the early charm, the possessiveness, the financial control, the bruises, the apologies that never meant anything. "He never wanted kids," she said. "He said they ruined me. When I was pregnant with Leo, he punched the wall next to my head so hard it cracked. Said I was replacing him. I ran after he grabbed Mia and locked her in the closet for 5 hours. She was 5. Jonathan couldn't speak. His hands clenched. "Why didn't you report him?" She laughed bitterly. "I did, twice. They said without evidence, without bruises, there was nothing they could do. And then he found me again. So I stopped trying." That night, they installed 3 new cameras and added motion sensors to the outer gate. Noah doubled his patrol shifts. Elizabeth slept in the same room as the children, door locked, a bat under the bed. Still, a part of her remained awake, listening. And then it happened. 3 nights later, at 2:03 a.m., the alarm went off. Jonathan leapt out of bed. Elizabeth was already in the hallway, grabbing Mia and Leo. "Stay with them," he shouted. To Celia, who emerged from her room in a panic. Jonathan and Noah raced downstairs. The kitchen door was wide open. The lock snapped clean off. Snow blew in across the floor. In the living room, something waited. A box. Jonathan approached it slowly. Inside, a child's toy. A worn-out stuffed bear, soaked in something dark and red. Next to it, a note scrawled in Daniel's unmistakable handwriting, "He's next." Jonathan turned to Noah. "Get the kids out now." The police arrived 15 minutes later. They took photos, dusted for prints. But Elizabeth already knew. They wouldn't find anything. Daniel didn't leave evidence. He left messages. Mia refused to sleep that night. "Mummy, he wants to." "And take Leo." Elizabeth held her tight. "I won't let him, I swear to you." But the fear had planted its roots. The children could feel it. Even Celia, stoic and maternal, looked older now, wearier. Jonathan sat alone in his office, staring at the toy bear. He thought about the girl in the hospital bed, his daughter, and for the first time in years, he felt the same helpless rage he'd buried deep inside, only this time he could fight back. And he would. "I'll destroy him," he whispered to himself. The next morning, Elizabeth found a letter slipped. Under her door, no name, no return address, just 6 words written in messy block letters. The letter didn't just send chills, it shattered any illusion of control. "He's already inside." Elizabeth read those words again and again, her fingers tightening with every pass. It wasn't just a threat anymore. It was proof that Daniel had breached the one place that was supposed to be untouchable. Jonathan stared at the note, jaw locked. "He's playing mind games," he said, "trying to make you question everything." But Elizabeth wasn't questioning. She believed him. Jonathan tripled the security. The locks were upgraded, the perimeter lights set to motion triggers, the alarm systems synced to their phones. Still, Elizabeth moved differently, faster, tighter, always glancing over her shoulder. Mia refused to go into the garden. Leo cried if Elizabeth left his sight. Even Celia, once the calm backbone of the home, kept a knife tucked into her apron pocket. They called the detective again. Detective Sloane. A woman with tired eyes and a voice like gravel. "We need protection," Jonathan said. "You need action," Elizabeth added. Sloane raised an eyebrow. You've got more protection than most celebrities, but unless he breaks a restraining order or commits a crime while on your property, my hands are tied. He has committed a crime, Jonathan snapped. He broke in. He left threats. Without prints, without a camera ID, Sloane replied. It's hearsay. I believe you, but the court won't. After she left, Jonathan stood in the hallway, staring at the painting above the fireplace. A storm at sea, a ship barely visible through the waves. This was my daughter's favorite, he said to Elizabeth, who joined him. She said the storm was just a story the ocean told, and the ship had to listen. Elizabeth blinked slowly. That's how it feels. Like I'm always in the middle of someone else's storm. That night, Elizabeth moved the kids into her room permanently. She barely slept, eyes trained on the hallway through the gap beneath the door. At 2:34 a.m., she heard something, a creak, a breath. She held her own breath. Nothing followed, just silence. But in the morning, she found muddy footprints outside the window, inside the garden wall. Jonathan lost his temper. That's it, he said. We're going on offense. He called Noah and left strict orders. Then he called Sloane again, demanding undercover surveillance. She agreed grudgingly, but warned him, this may provoke him. Meanwhile, Elizabeth found herself unraveling. The rooms began to feel smaller. She started leaving doors ajar. She didn't trust closed spaces. She moved mirrors. She removed the dresser from in front of the guest closet. She muttered things under her breath without realizing. Celia began gently suggesting she eat more, sleep more. But Elizabeth only nodded and returned to pacing, watching, waiting. 3 days passed without incident. The quiet felt wrong. It was a pause, not a peace. On the 4th day, Jonathan was at a business meeting when his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. How well do you really know her? Attached was a photo. Elizabeth, holding Leo, at a women's shelter. The date stamp, 6 months ago. Jonathan stared. He already knew she had been through hell. But this felt different. The implication wasn't that she was a victim. It was a warning, a seed of doubt. When he returned home, Elizabeth noticed something, a hesitation in his voice, a shift in his gaze. You got a message, she said. He didn't deny it. Yeah, someone sent me a photo of you with Leo at a shelter. She nodded. It was right before I met you. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't think I owed you every detail of my trauma, she snapped, because I was trying to forget. Jonathan didn't respond right away. Finally, he said, you don't owe me anything. But if we're going to get through this, if I'm going to protect you, I need honesty. Total. That's not protection, she said quietly. That's ownership. I left that behind. The words cut. Deeper than she intended. Jonathan stepped back. You're not a prisoner here, Elizabeth. You can leave any time. But she didn't want to leave. Not really. She just wanted the past to stop reaching for her throat. That night, Elizabeth found another letter under her pillow. He told you you'd be safe. He lied. Elizabeth gripped the note in her hands, knuckles white, lungs refusing to fill. She checked the door. Locked. Windows secure. No sign of forced entry. But someone had been inside. Again, her skin crawled. He's not just watching, she whispered. He's here. Jonathan rushed in seconds later, eyes immediately going to her hands. What is it? She showed him. He read the note, slowly, lips tightening. That's it, he said. We're locking this place down. Noah swept the entire house with a scanner, checking every crevice, attic, vents, crawl spaces. He found a small camera hidden in the bookshelf in the main hallway, battery-powered, wireless. A camera pointed directly at the family photo Celia had taken a week ago, the one that included Jonathan, Mia, Leo, and Elizabeth. This wasn't here 2 days ago, Noah said. He's been inside, and he didn't come through the doors. Jonathan swore under his breath. He's using old access points, or someone let him in. That suggestion hung in the air like smoke. Elizabeth flinched. Are you saying one of us? Jonathan shook his head. No, but someone is working with him, feeding him information. There's no other way. The realization was a bullet to the spine. Inside help. That changed everything. Elizabeth called Celia into the room. The housekeeper looked more shaken than usual. Have you seen anyone new around here? Gardeners, delivery people? Celia shook her head. Only regulars, but something strange happened. Jonathan stepped forward. What? Yesterday I found Leo's shoes moved. They were inside the upstairs hallway. I thought maybe Elizabeth brought them up. Elizabeth froze. No, I haven't touched them since the day we got here. That night the entire house felt hollow, as if something had already slipped through its bones. Jonathan stood by the window in his office staring at the gate. Noah rotated his surveillance position every hour. Elizabeth sat at the edge of her bed, arms wrapped around her knees. Mia, beside her, whispered, "Mommy, is he a monster?" Elizabeth didn't know how to answer. "Monsters don't always have claws," she said. "Sometimes they smile." At 3:46 a.m., a phone rang. Not Jonathan's, not Elizabeth's. It was the burner phone again. Jonathan answered this time. "You're pathetic," Daniel said. Instantly. "You think she loves you. You think you're her hero." "You're out of moves," Jonathan said calmly. "Out of time." Daniel laughed, cold and flat. "You think locking her in a cage is saving her? She ran from you too, you know." Jonathan's face went still. "What did you say?" "I was at the shelter the day before she left," Daniel continued. "Ask her what she said about you. About how she always finds men who want to fix her like she's broken." The call dropped. When Elizabeth entered the office minutes later, Jonathan didn't look up. "You talked about me?" he asked quietly. "At the shelter?" She froze. "What are you talking about?" "Daniel said he saw you, that you said things, that I was just another man trying to fix you." She stepped forward slowly. "Jonathan, he's manipulating you." "So it's not true?" he asked. Her silence said everything. "I did say something," she admitted. "But it was before the mansion, before you opened your life to me. I said I didn't want to be someone's project. I said I was tired of being rescued by men who only stayed long enough to feel good about themselves." She paused, breathing hard. "But that's not what you are." He stared at her, long, quiet, then turned away. "I need some air." He didn't come back inside until dawn. Elizabeth couldn't sleep. Her heart cracked under the weight of what had just shifted between them. In the morning, Mia wouldn't eat. Leo kept asking, "Where's Mr. Jonathan?" Celia whispered to Elizabeth over coffee, "Don't let him drift. He's not like the others." Elizabeth wanted to believe that, but Daniel was an artist with fear, and he just used her own words to twist the blade. Later that afternoon, Elizabeth walked into the garden to find Jonathan staring at the fountain. She joined him in silence. "He knows how to get in." "Your head," she said. "He's been there before." "I'm not angry you said those things," Jonathan replied. "I'm angry that I believed I was different." "You are," she said, "but right now he's trying to split us apart, because he knows we're stronger together." He looked at her, really looked, and finally nodded. "Then we stay together." But that night another letter arrived. This one wasn't a threat, it was a map, a detailed floor plan of Jonathan's house, every room labeled, every escape route marked, one word written across the top: "Tonight." Jonathan held the map like it was made of fire. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with fury. "He's telling us what he's going to do," he said, eyes locked on the word "tonight." Elizabeth stared at the floor plan, instantly recognizing every hallway, every blind corner. She felt the hairs on her neck rise. He's been inside, more than once. He knows this place better than we do. Noah immediately activated the emergency lockdown protocol. Metal shutters slid over the windows. All doors were sealed. Security cameras flicked on in every hallway. "We won't wait for him to make a move," Jonathan said. "This time, we'll be ready." Elizabeth took Leo and Mia to the panic room, a room she hadn't known existed until now. Steel walls, monitored feed, access to emergency lines. "Stay here," she told them, her voice firm but gentle. "Don't open the door for anyone but me or Jonathan." As soon as she stepped out, the air changed. The house felt like a trap. Every creak of the walls, every hum of the vents felt like breath being held. Jonathan and Noah took positions on separate floors. Elizabeth waited in the den, her back to the fireplace, heart pounding. "Come on, Daniel," she thought. "Let's end this." At 10:47 p.m., the power went out. Instantly, emergency lights flooded the hallways with blood-red glow. Cameras switched to infrared. Noah's voice came through the walkie. "Cut was internal. He's inside." Jonathan's reply was ice-cold. "Seal all exits." "He's not leaving." Elizabeth moved through the shadows like a ghost, her breath slow and measured. Then she heard it. A faint knock. Not on the front door. On the second-floor hallway window. Impossible. That window was 12 feet above the ground. She crept closer. The knock came again. Then, glass shattered. A dark figure rolled in through the opening and landed silently. A flash of red light caught his outline. Tall, lean, familiar. Daniel. Elizabeth backed up slowly. He hadn't seen her yet. She gripped the metal rod she'd tucked under her sleeve. "Don't freeze," she told herself. "Not this time." Daniel turned, scanning the hallway. "Lizzie," he cooed. Come out, don't be shy, I brought you something." He held up a small, wrapped package. "Something you left behind." Elizabeth stepped into view, rod raised. "Back! Away!" she said, voice sharp. Daniel smiled. "There she is, the Queen of Steel. Pretending she's not scared." "I'm not pretending," she snapped. "I am scared, but I'm done running." He took a step toward her. "That's cute." Another step. "But I know you. I know what you'll do. You'll break. You always break." He lunged. She swung. The metal rod connected with his arm. He yelped in pain but didn't stop. They grappled, crashing into the hallway wall. Elizabeth fought with everything, kicking, screaming, biting. Finally, a hard shove sent Daniel sprawling into the bookshelf. Books fell. A camera caught the whole thing. Jonathan arrived seconds later, tackling Daniel to the ground, blood on his lip, fury in his eyes. "You don't touch her!" he roared. But Daniel was smiling. "She'll never be yours," he hissed. "She's broken, and so are you." Noah appeared next, gun raised, aimed directly at Daniel's chest. "Move, and you're done." Daniel lifted his hands. "Is this the part where you play hero, Jonathan? Where she finally sees you as something more than a wallet with a heart condition?" Jonathan punched him. The police arrived 10 minutes later. They took Daniel in, bleeding, grinning, defeated, but smug. As they dragged him out, he looked at Elizabeth. "This isn't over," he whispered. Elizabeth collapsed to her knees. Jonathan rushed to her. "You're safe now," he said, cradling her, but she shook her head. "No, not yet." He looked confused. "Why not?" "Because I'm not done fighting." An hour later, she sat in the interrogation room at the station. She gave a full statement, every detail, every bruise, every threat. "I want full prosecution," she told Detective Sloan. "No deals, no reduced sentences." Sloan nodded. "We'll get him." Back at the mansion, Jonathan watched Mia and Leo sleeping. In the panic room, safe, unaware. He looked at the walls, the cameras, the lights, all the protection money could buy. And yet it was her who protected them all. Elizabeth wasn't someone to be saved. She had saved them. But as he turned to leave, he noticed something odd. On the wall of the panic room, in crayon, Mia had drawn a new picture, a house, her, Leo, Mommy, and a shadow figure outside the window, watching. Again, the house felt too quiet. After Daniel's arrest, everyone expected peace to finally return. But peace is not just the absence of danger. It's the ability to believe in safety again. And none of them did. Not really. Elizabeth walked the halls like a ghost in her own skin. Jonathan watched her from across rooms, wanting to reach her but unsure how. Trauma doesn't evaporate. It calcifies. It settles into bones. Noah was the only one who didn't drop his guard. He may be in custody, he told Jonathan, but people like him have followers, friends, obsessives. Don't let your guard down. Jonathan agreed, but he was already slipping. His body was tired, his mind overloaded. The pressure of being protector, lover, and savior all at once had begun to fracture his resolve. Elizabeth spent more time with the children again, reading to Mia in soft whispers, helping Leo sort colors by the fireplace. Yet there was a glass wall between them. They could feel it. She smiled, but it didn't touch her eyes. "Is he gone forever?" Mia asked one night. Elizabeth kissed her forehead. "He's gone," she said, but she didn't say forever. That week the lawyers moved fast. Elizabeth filed for a permanent restraining order with mountains of new evidence, recordings, statements, even the camera footage from the hallway. Prosecutors wanted to push for aggravated stalking, trespassing, and intent to harm. Daniel's lawyer pled not guilty, claimed mental instability. Jonathan offered to testify. Elizabeth declined. "This part," she said, "I finish alone." Meanwhile, a new letter arrived. Not from Daniel, but from someone claiming to be his half-brother. "He wasn't alone in this," the letter read. "You took something from him. Now someone will take something from you." It was unsigned, no return address, a threat, but also a clue. Jonathan had never heard of Daniel, having a half-brother. Neither had Elizabeth. She called Sloane. "Find out who this is," she demanded. Sloane did. A man named Carter Black, convicted of minor felonies. Last known address, 2 states away. A background filled with petty crimes and one disturbing note. He'd applied for a janitor position at the shelter Elizabeth once stayed in. "He's obsessed with her too," Sloane said. "It's not just Daniel. She's become a symbol." That word chilled Jonathan. Symbol. Elizabeth wasn't just being stalked. She had become someone's ideology, a target for broken men who believed she belonged to them. "What do we do?" Jonathan asked. Sloane replied, "We don't wait this time. We bait." Noah didn't like the plan. "It's dangerous, reckless." But Elizabeth agreed to it. "If they're watching," she said, "then let them see me walk alone. Let them come." Jonathan hated the idea. He argued, he yelled, but deep down he knew this was who she was now. A fighter, a flame. 2 days later, she walked through the park near the old shelter alone. Cameras tracked every step. Officers in plain clothes lingered nearby. Jonathan watched the feed from the mansion, sweat pooling on his brow. The children were with Celia. Noah was in the surveillance van. Everyone waited. 5 minutes, 10, 15. At 17 minutes, a man approached her. He was young, mid-20s, hoodie, nervous energy. He didn't touch her, just sat next to her on the bench. "You don't remember me," he said, "but I saw you at the shelter." Elizabeth turned. "You're Carter?" "He talked about you like you were his savior," he said, not answering the question. "Said you were the one who got away." Elizabeth stayed still. "Why follow me now?" "Because if you escaped, maybe I could too," Carter said. "But then he told me you lied, that you betrayed him, that you were using him." Elizabeth's voice was low. "Do I look like someone who's in control?" Carter's lip trembled. "You're not what I expected." "Good," she said. Because neither are you. The officers approached slowly. Carter didn't run. He let them take him. On the drive back, Elizabeth sat in silence. Jonathan was waiting at the gate. When she stepped out of the car, he ran to her. "You okay?" She nodded. "I'm tired, but I'm okay." He pulled her into a hug. "It's over," he whispered. But as they walked into the house, a final camera feed blinked to life. A grainy, handheld video playing on an encrypted loop, a distant shot of the mansion, recorded. Just the night before, the grainy video played on repeat in the surveillance room. The mansion, seen through tree branches, the camera shifted, just slightly with each gust of wind. "That wasn't from the police," Noah said. "That angle, it's from inside the property line." Jonathan stared at the screen, fists clenched. Someone was here again, and we missed it. Elizabeth watched silently, arms crossed, mouth pressed tight. Her expression was beyond fear. It was strategy now. Celia, shaken, admitted she'd let a delivery man pass the outer gate 2 nights ago. "He said you ordered new lighting sensors," she said, trembling. "He had a badge." Elizabeth exhaled hard. "He never got to the front door." "Because he didn't need to," Jonathan muttered. "He planted that camera, walked the grounds, and disappeared." Sloane returned that evening, face more drawn than usual. "Carter gave us a list of names. People from Daniel's chat groups. Most were just keyboard warriors, but one stands out, Eric Thorne, alias Revival. He's a survivalist, ex-military, kicked out for misconduct, has a record of stalking, and he's missing." Elizabeth paled. "And what does he want?" "He believes Daniel was wronged, that you represent every woman who destroys good men. He thinks you're the enemy." Jonathan looked at Sloane. "So what are you saying?" Sloane's face was grim. "I'm saying the real threat hasn't started yet." That night, Elizabeth didn't sleep. She sat in the dark, listening to every creak in the floorboards, every whisper of wind against the window. When Jonathan entered, she didn't look. "Up. It never ends," she said. "You kill one head, 2 more grow back." He sat beside her. "Then we cut deeper." "This isn't your war," she whispered. "You didn't sign up for this." He took her hand. "You're wrong. The second I stopped the car that night, this became my war too." The next day, they left the mansion for the first time together in weeks. Sloane arranged a secure location, an apartment safe house across the city. Noah led the relocation. Celia stayed behind to keep up appearances. "I don't want them to know we've moved," Elizabeth said. "If they think we're still there, we gain time." Jonathan hesitated but agreed. "As long as we stay close." The apartment was smaller, stripped down, but somehow comforting. No marble floors, no glass chandeliers, just clean walls, tight locks, and silence. Elizabeth found herself breathing deeper there. She watched Mia and Leo fall asleep, curled together on a mattress on the floor, and thought, for the first time, that maybe they'd outlast this. But survival breeds memory. And in that quiet, Elizabeth began to remember the part of her past she had buried even deeper than Daniel. She told Jonathan the truth 3 nights later, about her first love, about the baby she lost when she was 17, about the foster homes, the scars no one ever saw. "Daniel was just the loudest of the monsters," she said, "but he wasn't the first, and maybe that's why I let him in." Jonathan didn't speak. Instead, he held her hand tighter. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting me with that." And then, carefully, "Let me tell you something too." He stood, walked to the drawer, and returned with a folded document. "This is my medical file," he said. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with a heart defect, inoperable. I have 5, maybe 10 years left, less if I don't slow down." Elizabeth's mouth opened. "Why would you—" "Because I want you to know everything," he said. "I want you to have the choice I never gave you." Silence again. Then, "I choose you," Elizabeth said, voice low but steady. "Even if it's for 5 years, or 5 days, I choose you." They didn't kiss, not then, but something deeper passed between them, something anchored, something fierce. At 4:12 a.m., the safe house alarm triggered. But the sensors said nothing was outside until Noah checked the feed. A small black box sat at the door, and written on the top in red tape, "Revival begins now." The bomb squad arrived within minutes. Jonathan, Elizabeth, and the children were evacuated to the underground garage while the team examined the black box. Not a bomb, the technician finally confirmed. Not in the conventional sense. He opened it with a remote device. Inside were burned photographs, dozens of them, all women, some smiling, some crying, all with the same word etched over their eyes: liar. Elizabeth recognized none of the faces, but she understood the message. This was ideological now, not personal. She was just the most visible symbol. Jonathan clenched his jaw. "We're not dealing with one man, we're dealing with a cult mindset." Noah nodded. "The doctrine is spreading." Carter called it revival. They believe they're restoring power to men who've lost their voice. "And I'm the villain in their origin story," Elizabeth muttered. "Their Eve, their Medusa." "You're their scapegoat," Sloane corrected grimly. "But we're going to burn their scripture to the ground." A digital forensic team began decoding the encrypted drive hidden inside the box. What they found was chilling. A video manifesto, a man masked standing in front of a fire. His voice was distorted, but the cadence was unmistakably Daniel's. Smug, slow, theatrical. "She thinks this ends with an arrest. She thinks justice wears a badge. But justice belongs to the fallen, to those left behind. Revival has no leader, it has purpose." "We know where he filmed it," Sloane told them. "A warehouse on the industrial edge. But by the time we got there, it was clean. Not a print, not a smudge, just a line burned into the wall. You're already too late." That night, back at the apartment, Elizabeth paced the floor while Jonathan stared out the window, his body showing signs of strain. His breathing was shallow. His fingers trembled slightly. "You need rest," she said, "and you need freedom," he replied. "We can't keep living like prisoners." "Then what?" she asked. "We leave the city." He shook his head. "We take it back." Elizabeth proposed a press conference. "They want me to disappear, to hide. What if I do the opposite? What if I speak out, show them I'm not afraid?" "You'll be painting a target on your chest," Sloane warned. "It's already there," Elizabeth said. 2 days later, in a borrowed room at a community center, Elizabeth stepped in front of 6 cameras and a crowd of 50 reporters. Her hair was tied back. Her eyes were clear. "I am not here to beg for safety," she said into the mic. "I am here to declare it. I'm not the past they blame or the silence they crave. I am a mother, I am a survivor, and I am still standing." The speech went viral, thousands of views, then hundreds of thousands. Women wrote in, some anonymous, some public, all saying the same thing: "You told my story." But not all the messages were supportive. One comment rose to the top: "You think light makes you stronger, but all it does is make you easier to aim at." Elizabeth closed the laptop. "We just moved up his timeline," she said. "He won't wait anymore." That night, Jonathan collapsed. He gripped the table mid-conversation, fell to his knees, and gasped for air. Elizabeth screamed. Noah rushed in. "Get the emergency meds!" The ambulance came within minutes. At the hospital, Jonathan was stabilized, but unconscious. The doctor's voice was grave. "His heart can't handle much more stress. He needs rest, and you need to decide how to fight this war without him." Elizabeth sat by Jonathan's bed, holding his hand. "I'm not letting you go," she whispered. "Not now. Not when we're this close." The beeping of the machines answered softly, and outside, across the hospital parking lot, a man in A grey hoodie snapped a photo. The caption posted an hour later read, "The king is down, time for the queen." Elizabeth didn't leave Jonathan's bedside for 20 hours. She held his hand, whispered stories from her past, from their past. She told him about the first time she saw him, not just that night in the snow, but the way he stood in the kitchen the next morning, like he was holding back a hurricane. "You saved us," she whispered. "Now it's my turn." Noah arrived, with updates. The hospital's been locked down, no press, no visitors, but that photo, it's being shared on dark web channels. They're calling you the Widow Queen. Elizabeth stood slowly, her face unreadable. "Then let's give them a queen they'll never forget." Back at the safe house, Sloane laid out the plan. "We found another lead. The group's central server is based in a warehouse complex 3 hours from here. Isolated, minimal traffic, but heavy power usage. We're prepping a warrant." Elizabeth's eyes narrowed. "Warrants take time." "We don't want a shootout," Sloane replied. "We want to dismantle their network from the inside." Elizabeth wasn't interested in waiting. That night, she went through the video again. The masked manifesto, the flicker of a light in the background, the sound of water dripping, the faint echo. She replayed it a dozen times. Then she saw it, on frame 32, a half-second reflection in the man's goggles, a window, and through that window, a cracked sign, Mercer Tools. She called Noah. "I found it." He didn't ask how. He just replied, "I'll gear up." Sloane was furious when she heard. "You're going in there without backup?" Elizabeth answered with steel in her voice. "I'm not waiting for another headline. I'm not waiting for more women to die." They left before dawn. Elizabeth, Noah, and 2 officers Sloane reluctantly assigned. They arrived at the warehouse as the sun rose, long shadows stretching across the cracked parking lot. "Thermal shows 2 bodies inside," Noah whispered. "No heat from machinery. They're waiting." Elizabeth adjusted the earpiece. "Let them." They entered quietly. The warehouse was stripped down, bare walls, steel beams, cameras rigged to every angle. Then a voice echoed through the space. "You came after all, Queen Elizabeth. So brave, so stupid." Eric Thorne stepped out of the dark. He wasn't masked now. He wore a smug smile, a small camera strapped to his chest. "Smile for your audience," he sneered. "They're watching you die." Noah raised his weapon. "One move and you drop." But Eric didn't flinch. He lifted a detonator. "You think I care about dying? This isn't about survival. It's about message." "Then here's a better one," Elizabeth said, and she stepped forward. Eric's smirk faltered. "You think you scare me?" "I don't need to," she said. "You already fear what I represent. Women who walk through hell and don't burn. Women who speak, who fight, who win." He pressed the button. Nothing happened. "Looking for this?" Sloane's voice echoed through a speaker. "We disabled your playtime toys 30 minutes ago." Eric's face drained of color. Officers swarmed in. He lunged toward Elizabeth. She didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped aside, grabbed a pipe from the wall, and struck his arm with it just as he reached for her. He collapsed, screaming. Arrested. Levstream shut down. Revival silenced. That night, Elizabeth returned to the hospital. Jonathan was awake, weak, pale, but smiling. "You didn't wait," he whispered. "You never do." She leaned down and kissed his forehead. "You would have done the same, except less elegantly." They both laughed. For the first time, it sounded real. Mia and Leo visited later that day. Mia drew a new picture, a woman in armor standing in front of a burning building. She handed it to Elizabeth. "That's you," she said. "Fighting dragons." Elizabeth held the picture to her chest. "Not dragons, she whispered. Just ghosts. But she knew it now. Some ghosts don't disappear. Some you burn to ash. 3 days later, Elizabeth stood on the balcony of the hospital, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold. Below her, the city moved as if nothing had happened. But for her, for them, everything had. She had become a national symbol. Headlines naming her the woman who fought back. But fame didn't bring peace. If anything, it made the air heavier. Jonathan, slowly regaining strength, watched her from the bed. "You look like you're waiting for the sky to fall," he said. She didn't turn. "Because it always has." "Not anymore," he said. "Not while I'm breathing." She smiled. "That's the thing, Jonathan. I don't need you to breathe for me anymore. I just need you beside me." They were scheduled to return home the next day. The mansion had been cleared, the security system updated with biometric locks, facial recognition and encrypted cameras. But Elizabeth had doubts, not about safety, about home. The mansion wasn't hers. It never had been. And now she wasn't sure she belonged anywhere. That night, she dreamed of Daniel. In the dream, he wasn't violent. He was soft-spoken, charming, like when she first met him. He held Mia in his lap, whispering in her ear. Elizabeth screamed, but Mia just laughed. The dream ended with Daniel turning toward her and saying, "You brought me back." She woke up drenched in sweat. "I need to see him," she told Sloane later that day. The detective frowned. "Why?" "To end this. For good. He's in solitary. No press, no visitors, barely human contact." "Then let me be the ghost at his window," Elizabeth replied. With special permission, she was granted 10 minutes. Daniel sat behind reinforced glass, thinner, sunken-eyed, but still smirking. "Look at you," he said, "all fire and fury. Got what you wanted?" "No," she replied. "You did. You wanted to be remembered. Now you are. As a coward who needed followers to feel strong." He leaned forward. "You think this ends with me?" "It started with you," she said, "but it ends with me." She stood. "Goodbye, Daniel." He laughed, but she didn't look back. At the mansion, Jonathan had a surprise waiting. The children's rooms had been redesigned. Mia's now had stars on the ceiling. Leo's had a jungle theme. And in the garden, a new path had been laid, stones leading to a quiet bench under an old tree. "This is yours now," Jonathan said. "Not just the house, everything it protects." Elizabeth took his hand. "Then I want to protect it back." Later, she sat at her desk with a blank page. She began writing, not a letter, not a diary, a memoir, a declaration. The first line read, "They wanted me to be a memory. I became a monument." But as she typed, she noticed something. A shadow near the window, a flicker of motion. She stood up, opened the curtain. Nothing, only the wind, and a single flower left on the windowsill. The flower sat on the windowsill for days. Elizabeth couldn't bring herself to throw it away, nor could she figure out who left it. It was a simple white lily, its petals still crisp, its stem unbent. She would wake up every morning and look at it, a quiet reminder that some things weren't as final as they seemed. The flower was beautiful. It was haunting. It was a message. But who was it from? Jonathan noticed her distraction, but he didn't press her. Instead, he kept moving forward, planning small family outings, building routines, trying to bring normalcy to a house that had never known it. "We should take the kids to the zoo this weekend," he said one night. "Let them see real lions instead of ghosts." Elizabeth smiled faintly. Real lions, with real cages. But she agreed. She needed a break. She needed a moment where the world was just loud enough to drown out the whisper of old fears. That weekend, they went. Mia laughed when she saw the giraffes. Leo pointed excitedly at the elephants. It was normal. Too normal. And for a while, Elizabeth was able to forget the shadows that still clung to her, but they weren't gone, not completely. She could feel them. The pressure in her chest when she heard a car engine idling too long outside the house, the way her hand would hover over the door handle when she left the safe house for the first time in days, the sound of every creak in the walls at night. But she didn't tell Jonathan. Not yet. Sloane called a week later. "We've got a lead," she said. "Eric Thorne's connections. There's more to the story. Revival isn't gone. It's just fragmented. We've got an underground channel operating in 3 other cities. It's starting again." Elizabeth's heart sank. "I thought it was over." "It never is," Sloane replied. "But we know who's behind it now. We know who." The name hit Elizabeth like a punch to the gut. Derek Blake. The name of Daniel's cousin. The one person she had never fully suspected. The one person she had never truly known. "Get him," Elizabeth said, voice cold. "Take him down." That night, the plans began to form. The warehouse raid would be risky. Derek Blake had built an empire off secrecy, off violence. But this time, they were ready. Noah's team was already positioned. Sloane's agents were circling in the shadows. And Elizabeth, she had no more fear to give. In the hours before they left, Jonathan found her standing by the window again. The flower was gone. "You think we've finally got it under control?" he asked quietly, joining her. She didn't turn, but her voice was steady. "No. I think we've finally found our peace, but it doesn't mean we stop fighting." He took her hand and kissed her forehead. "Then I'm with you, all the way." They didn't speak much after that. It wasn't the silence of fear, though. It was the silence of understanding. There was nothing left to prove, only to finish what they had started. The warehouse was abandoned when they arrived. The doors creaked open, revealing empty shelves, dim lighting, and the ghosts of things long gone. They moved quietly, methodically. The sound of their boots echoed in the cavernous space. It wasn't long before they found the hidden compartment, a secret room beneath the floorboards. And there, in the center, was a large safe. Inside, documents, photographs, blueprints, the final damning pieces of the puzzle. Derek Blake had been pulling strings from the shadows, but his empire wasn't a symbol of power. It was a house of cards. And as the team carefully catalogued every document, Elizabeth realized one thing. The end wasn't coming from some grand finale. It wasn't about big explosions or spectacular confrontations. It was about dismantling the quiet rot, the slow burn of betrayal, one piece at a time. The raid ended with Derek Blake's arrest. No shots fired, no final cinematic showdown, just a quiet final victory. Back at the mansion, Jonathan sat on the couch with Leo and Mia, the sounds of their laughter filling the room. Elizabeth stood in the doorway, watching them. The weight in her chest had lifted. She didn't have to fight anymore, not for herself, not for them. And as the sun set, casting its warm, golden light through the windows, Elizabeth took a deep breath. For the first time, she felt something stir deep inside her. Not fear, not worry, but hope. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. The morning was quiet. No alarms, no messages, no threats, just sunlight filtering through the windows and the muffled sound of cereal being poured in the kitchen. Elizabeth stood barefoot in the hallway, listening to the soft rhythms of a life she had built, painfully, defiantly, entirely her own. She smiled. It wasn't the first smile she'd allowed in weeks, but it was the first one that didn't feel borrowed. Jonathan emerged from the bedroom, still moving a little slowly, but stronger than before. His recovery had been slow, steady. Elizabeth had been at his side for every step. "You look like someone who finally slept," he said, wrapping his arm around her waist. "I did," she replied, "for the first time in years." The children's laughter echoed from the garden. Leo was chasing bubbles. Mia twirled in a new dress Celia had bought her, spinning until the world blurred. It was a scene that could have belonged to someone else in another life, but it was theirs now. Elizabeth walked through the garden path Jonathan had built. At the bench beneath the old tree, she sat with a leather-bound notebook in her hands. The memoir was complete, every chapter a scar, every sentence a breath she'd once held. She'd sent the final draft to a publisher 2 nights ago. Not for fame, not for money, but because someone else somewhere needed to read it. Needed to know they weren't alone. Inside the mansion, Sloane called. "It's done," she said. "Derek Blake pled guilty. No trial. He's naming every collaborator in Revival. We're shutting them down, one by one." "Thank you," Elizabeth replied. "For not giving up," Sloane chuckled. "You made it very hard to." There was a celebration that evening. Nothing big, just friends. Celia made a cake. Jonathan played music on the old record player. Noah even brought his girlfriend. Mia performed a play in the living room. Leo danced in a way only toddlers could. It was chaotic and messy and real. Later, after everyone had left and the children were asleep, Elizabeth and Jonathan stood outside under the stars. "You ever think we'd make it here?" he asked. She shook her head. "I didn't think I'd want to. I didn't believe I deserved this." "You do," he said, "every second." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You asked me once what I wanted, back when we first met, remember? Yeah, you said, just a place to breathe." She smiled. "I found it." He wrapped his arm around her tighter. "You didn't just find it. You built it." The next morning, Elizabeth woke early. She watched the sun rise from the same spot where she'd once feared it would never rise again. Then she sat at her desk and wrote a single line at the bottom of her journal. "This is not where the story ends. It's where I finally begin." Some people enter our lives like storms, and others like shelter from them. Would you have stopped the car that night or kept driving? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe. There are more stories like this, quiet, powerful, unforgettable, just waiting to be told.